It'd be like with a broader
I'm happy for
potential
that.
for impact.
We have started recording, so I think that means we should start the meeting. Screen, but we'll go around and do introductions and then have public comment. But first, let me just welcome everybody to the April meeting of the Arlington County Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission, C2E2. The meeting's been recorded, so everybody knows that. After introductions and public comment, and we do have a public commenter at Sue.
I do.
So we'll have public comment.
I'm a sad replacement for Steve. But across the street from me, and I aspire to be, we've lived across the street for 20 years, so we live on 5th Street.
Right by the VHC.
At the VHC, and I didn't realize he came 2 months ago.
But hold on, we'll do introductions.
Oh, sorry.
We'll do public comment. So, but I'm glad you're excited to get into it. But after public comment, all the commissioners will be able to speak as general opportunity. And so let's just do, so first of all, Scott Bordeaux is at the SPRC on the 2nd. Lily's at the Transportation Commission meeting. But otherwise, I think a good turnout. But let's go around the table and just quickly say who you are and what you're doing here.
Okay.
Anna, we'll start with you.
I'm Jenna Peabody. I'm with the DES comms team.
Great.
Henry Perlow, Commissioner. Hey everybody, I'm Malcolm Gregory. This is my first in-person C2E2 meeting, so it's good to see everybody's face in person.
Right. You introduced yourself in our virtual meeting, but now it turns out you're really tall.
Trevor Montano, Commissioner.
David Friedman, Commissioner. Doug Snowinboss, Commissioner.
We'll come back to Sue. Joe.
Joe Trevette, Commissioner.
Elizabeth Whitney, Commissioner.
Lisa Marcellus, Commissioner.
Cindy Lewin, Commissioner.
Jennifer Fioretti, Assistant County Manager for Climate Policy.
I'm Brian Esty, Legislative and Policy Analyst for Arlington County.
Great. And on the phone, I see Jake. I'll just call your name. Jake.
Yeah, I'm Jake. I'm a member of the Energy Committee, but I'm just here for the relevant legislative updates.
Right. And Jamie.
Yes, same as Jake. Energy Committee, looking forward to hearing what's new.
Great. And Rich.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Rich Dooley, Climate Policy Office, working together with Jen and team, Director of Climate Policy there. Thanks so much.
And thank you, Rich. And Alex.
Alex Rowe, Commissioner.
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica, just a resident.
Great, welcome. And then somebody 2980666. Be somebody's calling in a different way. And Rob.
Oh, hi, Rob Sindel, Commissioner.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Cindy, did you get an ID from the call-in number?
I didn't.
And we have our guest.
Oh, right. Sorry, Greg. I forgot you.
Greg Dumas, interested member of the public.
Jessica is just a member of the public.
Just a casual member.
Kevin Vincent, Commissioner, is just joining us. So 703-80666. Can you tell us who you are? Well,
It looks like they're muted.
yeah, it may be that you're tied to one of these. Well, let us know when you chance. But with that, I would like to introduce Sue Campbell from the Glen Carlin Civic Association to talk about the big exciting new project at Carlin Springs as part of the Virginia Hospital Center. Henry bravely raised his hand last month to be our rep. Sue, this is him. And yes, somebody else from Glen Carlin came a couple of months ago to speak about this. This is obviously going to be a very hot issue with a lot of moving parts, and also as a healthcare facility, not the kind of building that we have a lot of experience with analyzing. Lots of stormwater issues. And with that, I turn it over to you. Oh, I have to set my timer. You have 3 minutes.
So I have a little bit different perspective than my neighbor Steve Young, comes to these commission meetings all the time. But I have been on CivFed for about, I don't even know, 12 years maybe. So I've seen I've been a delegate the whole time. I try really hard not to keep my head down and not here for any more meetings, but I work with little kids during the day, all day long. But what's been fascinating to me is like every year I hear all the different reports and Jackie Snelling saying about how we need the dirt, we need the ground. We don't just need the tree canopy. And I see it in South Arlington. I'm a gardener. I grow 100 pounds of tomatoes every year for plant to row, and I give it to the I plant with the preschoolers and whatnot. I see the rain coming and it goes away before it gets to us. It might go north of Route 50 and then just gone. So I feel like between the issues with the fact that there's so much water in that land where they're putting their hospital, and then also the amount of dirt that's being removed, it's worrisome for me to see that as a South Arlington person. I've always been concerned with equity issues in the county. Since I don't know when we've had crazy flooding on Columbia Pike. I have garden friends that watched 2 years of concrete get poured into the ground on South Frederick Street. And I told some people, we did a tour last week of the property and they were like, what do you mean they poured concrete into the ground? I'm like, there's a giant underground river under here. And I hope you know that, because I mean, they have to repay Carlin Springs every single year. So my issues are, first of all, I wanted to make sure you guys knew about the perennially running spring that we've been bringing up for 3 years with the county. And I brought Steve's highlights from, he went to Natural Resources last week, if anybody's interested in those, because they're way more specific than anything else said. But my thing with you guys is, I don't know if you guys research or know about the hydrology of the land and know about how much the soil takes out of, the calculations or whatever. But I didn't focus so much on the building itself, but there's unbelievable parking there. We thought it was all going to be underground at first. And I think that's because of the water in the ground that they couldn't have the parking underground. So now it's all around. So the scenic view that all these people are going to be in this behavioral health center is of parking, like hundreds. And then the county needs 80 more. It's endless. So yeah, I can ramble on, but I feel like from an equity issue, from a gardener's issue, there are a lot of things, because this is a park too. And all these people are using the park that maybe don't have access to ride down the Huntley Meadows and see the Great Horndale babies or whatever that are happening now. So that's where I'm coming from. And I don't know if that's 3 minutes, but
that was 3 minutes.
I tried. Right. So yeah, and I wish I had specific questions to ask you guys, but I would love for you guys to consider all those issues related to.
Well, we really appreciate your taking the time to be here. I will note that Lisa Cross is also on forestry and her season.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And Malcolm, who is new, brings some stormwater background. But yeah, we do rely on help for some of these more technical issues that we may not have expertise in. So we appreciate your being here. And thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And yeah, you're welcome to stay, but also welcome to leave. But with that, we will turn to speakers. Brian Esky, who is our wonderful legislative liaison, legislative and policy analyst, but she's really, we're so lucky to have somebody who has in that position, has a lot of expertise on climate and environmental issues from his prior job. And this session had tons of climate and environmental bills to consider. So it was great to have that. And then we have our own, if you're ready, to talk about what happened at the state level and what are the opportunities for us to take advantage of at Arlington level. So.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'll start by actually breaking some news for you guys. You're the first commission to know about this. So we are going to run on tentatively decided on May 20th for a bunch of factors. I know there might be some conflicts, but it'll also be recorded. We're going to run I'm going to run a Legislative Affairs 101 to sort of give all of our commission members, and the public will also be able to view it, sort of an inside understanding on some of the sort of weird quirks of Richmond and how it works, you know, what the dynamics are on the ground, to help you all inform your work, especially, you know, coming up in June when we will reach out to you, or at the beginning of June, that we'll reach out to you all about starting to formulate your legislative recommendations for next year. So that'll be great. And you know, it's going to be a webinar, so anyone can come, but we would just ask that every commission at least have one person come, and then everyone else can watch live, can watch the recording. But we'll have more information out on that shortly. We're just firming up all of our details on that. The other thing, and you know, you don't have to answer this now, but we've also been entertaining an idea about, on the legislative front, of asking our commissions to reply with some broad ideas, maybe halfway through the summer, and then myself, Chris, who's our lobbyist down in Richmond, would sort of weed through, give feedback, let you all know like what ones might be most ripe for action this year. We're thinking about that as an opportunity to give you all a little more guidance and help you through the process, rather than historically it's just sort of been, hey guys, give us something, and then we make a decision and then we talk to you about it after. We're trying to create more input along the way, and the board office is also talking about a way to at least work together and incorporate input from the wider community as well on legislative stuff. Because right now, again, they just have either through the commission process or can go to public comment once things are created. So those are coming up, and you're all the first to know of the commissions. So, but with that, I'll get into it. As Cindy had highlighted, there was a lot on environment and climate. I'm going to try to go through it in broad strokes, and then I'm happy to answer specific questions that folks have. I'm going to start off with a very interesting and weird one that doesn't really fit it sort of fits in all of the categories. And this is actually a situation where our staff sort of volunteered to be on this, and then it was put into code, is a work group on an anaerobic digester for the region to deal with, you know, whether it's sewage, sludge, other organic matter, all that sort of stuff. Where I know we're working on one at our water treatment plant, but this would be, you know, many times larger, and you know, it would help us with our composting, like how we deal with our compost currently, and also, you know, operating our own water treatment plant. We would also, our sewage treatment plant, we would be able to send stuff there, which is a topic that I'll also cover because there was some work on that as well. But I'll start off, I'll go next to climate. There was a lot of what may on their surface seem like small tweaks to process, but together they, I think, are going to make some big differences in the climate space. There were several bills, and a lot of these came from what is now going to be the Commission on Energy, previously the Commission on Electric Utility Regulation. They're changing the name and giving it and putting in a bunch of recommendations that it had put forward, reforming integrated resource plans, the sort of plans that the utilities have to put out. There was amendments to how much moving around some of the compliance years on sorry, I was reading the wrong one. Apologies. That was an extension of the anaerobic digester, which was a complicated, interesting bill beyond that, because it's initially tied to the Three World facility down in Lower Lee. And so, yeah, so there was work to change requirements for purchase agreements. There was a lot of requirements of utilities and the State Corporation Commission to look into how to use more grid utilization metrics, grid enhancement technologies, and other things to sort of, again, not wholesale changes, but things that can make our system operate more efficiently. There was also extensions and expansions of our shared solar programs, both of the main utilities. And I believe for the first time, the co-ops were given the option to start a shared solar program as well. There was also some transit electrification requirements. Part of it allowing the utilities to put in more charging infrastructure, additional ones about the localities being able to require charging infrastructure be included in certain buildings. There was a lot on solar writ large, including establishing a solar interconnection grant fund, a sort of parking lot solar option for localities. Virginia became the second state to put in a framework on balcony solar, which is going into effect, which I'm sure a lot of folks probably in this room will use if they can. They've got a good balcony for it. We see here on further climate ones. And there's also some ratepayer protection elements that have been put into regulating cutoffs of people's electricity, making sure that undue costs aren't passed along on fuel and purchase power, and
equity focus.
I would say yes. There's also, I'll talk about it in a little bit, in the energy efficiency space. They're also looking about how to allow more access to some of the current energy efficiency programs that folks who perhaps don't own their own home or in multifamily housing. But I'll get into that a little bit further. They are setting up a task force on distributed energy resources to start to look into more generation, across rather than just full facilities. Grade solar. Let's see, in the conservation, here is the income qualified energy efficiency weatherization task force. And the big thing that focuses on is, especially for folks, working class folks who might be in an apartment, if it's individually metered, their landlord is the one who qualifies for the energy efficiency, but they don't see any return on that investment. So part of the goal of this task force is to try to bridge that gap to make sure we are deploying out as much energy efficiency and weatherization as we can. Because I think that's one of the least controversial elements, is that regardless of how we generate the electricity, we don't want to waste it. There are several additional bills in that space. I think I actually inadvertently skipped one. There's that I guess falls into climate. There's been further implementation of retail choice, not for full individual residential customers, but for some of our bigger loads. And the key part is they would be able to not use utility power and have an easier path to get back onto utility power. But if they do want to leave and shop elsewhere, they have to be shopping for VCEA compliant energy. So over time, and this is largely your big businesses, your data centers, they are now getting this option that will push them towards if they want to go it alone, they will go more and more towards a cleaner basket of energy, which I think will be very helpful, and also help with some of the grid sustainability, because a lot of the things that the utilities have been highlighting is they're like, well, we don't have enough capacity. That's why we need to build a new gas plants. And the sort of counterpoint was, or you could just let someone else generate. And finally, after Arlington's own Alfonso Lopez pushed that through, and finally leadership told Dominion and APCO, it's like, you need to figure this out, because you can't tell us that you need more help and then turn down help. So that got there. And I also realized I skipped over the Clean Energy Innovation Bank, which is the spinning off of something that under the last administration was done in the Department of Energy, but it's that sort of a loan entity who can, issue bonds, can do all sorts of different programs to help accelerate our clean energy transition. See here, onto the environment E. Invasives, there's quite a bit of move on invasives, including changing some of the rules about commercial viability being like a condition of whether something was considered a noxious weed or not, which was a constant fight, because folks would say, well, we can make money off of this. You can't. It's not an invasive, it's not a noxious weed, but that will be changing. There was some more powers given to power service districts to tackle invasives, and also it also requires the Commonwealth Transportation Board and highways folks to take on invasives more aggressively, which is good as well. On an environmental justice focus, there's there'll be a new requirement that all localities' comprehensive plans are not a requirement, an option that localities, actually, I'm forgetting, let me briefly. Okay, so all large localities, 20,000 or more, will have to, every time they consider a comprehensive plan, will have to reconsider a comprehensive plan. They will have to add in considerations for environmental justice. It doesn't fully specify what those have to be, but it is a requirement, a new requirement that'll be put forward. On water quality, there were several steps in regards to PFAS. There's now more monitoring requirements and some rules surrounding what biosolids or sewage sludge can be used for in the long term if you are a particular site that has a very high concentration of PFAS. The big key thing being, though, it'll obviously cost a bit of money, but there'll be more testing to make sure we know what we're actually dealing with in terms of PFAS within our, sort of sewage byproducts. That currently, because it's sort of the only way that you can, there's not enough landfill space, and it doesn't really solve the problem either. So there's a lot of ground application of that across the Commonwealth, and so ensuring that we know what's going on with that. On resilience, coming in for landing gear. They added some requirements for the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund around low income areas, and also prioritizing nature-based solutions to resiliency. There is requirement that the Coastal Resilience Plan be updated to sort of document and understand the impact on marshes. A couple of other technical changes into how things like loans and grants from the Virginia Community Flood and Preparedness Fund are affected. And then obviously the big one in sort of the resilience space and the energy space writ large is that Virginia will be returning to RGGI. And they tightened up in addition to that, they've tightened up the language to ensure that in the event of a less than cooperative governor in the future, the sort of tomfoolery of taking one maybe out of context cannot be done again. And then the last one here, which Jen and I worked a ton on this year, is tree canopy. Writ large, it is a win statewide because now all localities will be able to do some of the tree conservation that we've done. For Arlington, it's more of a mixed bag because we're doing a lot already. We didn't get a ton more, and there's some additional requirements that we'll have to work around. But the option remains open in future to sort of try to tackle getting us even now that we've sort of done the course, getting to our next level of tree canopy protection. Now that the big challenge this year with that was that we could not, we were negotiating on a bill that was changing things for everyone. So it was very difficult to convince the more hesitant bodies to be okay with what Arlington wants to do, because they're like, well, this will apply to everybody. So that's the big ones, and these are all ones that have passed. There was one big one that I'll mention that did not pass in regards to the sort of international energy codes for buildings. There was a bill to require those be adopted. That did not pass. Jen and I are already having meetings in this off season about how we tackle that issue long term, because the short version is that Virginia is very far behind, many years behind on that, many cycles behind, because these are redone every 3 years for those who don't know. And for context, there's a compromise that they're hoping to push through this year that would bring us up to the 2018 insulation standards for single family homes. I think we're in 2009, was it? Something like that currently. And so we were talking with our staff here internally and our CPHD housing and zoning and folks about how we might sort of change that conversation as we go into the next 3-year cycle of updating the building code and try to get us to a point where we're not, at the very least, so far behind. But with that covers sort of everything. I don't know, Jen, do you want to hop in on anything, or you want to see if anyone has questions?
Yeah, I just reflecting on the building code. I mean, that, thinking of Elizabeth, that is a big rock. And one, which is why we did not wait. In fact, even prior to the General Assembly session ending, we worked collaborating on a number of conversations, interdepartmental conversations about how to support, influence adoption of the energy efficiency sort of aspects of the code. And we have our chief building official participating. So He's in it, and as are some of his staff. So we are charting a course forward where this is one of those places where we can waste no time and need to make haste. And so that's what we plan to do in the off season, I think is what you said.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to figure out there's many different levers that we can try to push on that. Some of them legislative, some of them working through the administration about giving them advice on maybe appointing more people who focus on these issues, because currently on the housing and community development board for the state, which sort of handles this, I think they have one person who has any experience, like direct experience with the international building codes, and everyone else, there's a lot of builders on there, unsurprisingly. But there are no requirements about the backgrounds of people. So that's one thing that we're exploring is like, well, maybe we should have some requirements about, yeah, a builder should be on there, but also someone who works in energy efficiency, someone, works in the nonprofit housing space, things like that, to sort of make sure that all the voices are at the table. And then I won't go in too much detail about the rest of them, but there's a whole bunch of, again, much like these sort of little bills that I talked about before, that the Energy Commission was sort of pushing forward. I think we have a lot of little levers that we can push that will hopefully make a big impact while we're also sort of exploring bigger swings too.
You mentioned the Clean Energy Innovation Bank. What you said spin out, I think, or what specifically are they trying to address?
So this was
a $10 billion fund from the prior administration that.
Yes. So the administration set up their version of it after vetoing the legislature's version of it, which was an independent body that would sort of be free of politics, or more free of politics, I should say.
Yeah.
And then the administration had some valid arguments and some what I would categorize as because we want it this way, arguments into why it should be under the Department of Energy, but now it will be spun out because I think a lot of their initial argument was, well, this bank will be funded by money that has restrictions and like a definition of what clean energy is and things like that. But the way it's currently constructed, and now will be spun off into an more independent authority, it had no definitions of what is renewable energy, what does count, what doesn't count. It was sort of a trust us model. And so this new one has a lot more rules and will also be more outside of the political process. So it is not just a governor of any party spending on project that they like. And instead, it's a body of experts who are making the best judgment calls for the Commonwealth.
But it's still the original pocket of capital, nothing more at this point.
That I don't know. I think they intend to add more money to it. So this comes from my former boss, Delegate Lopez, who represents South Arlington and a bit of Alexandria, and then Majority Leader Scott Servell. So I think over time, they will probably put more money into it, akin to what they have done with the Housing Trust Fund. I think originally when Delegate Lopez and Senator Servell put forward the bill, it was in part to try to make sure we were pulling down a lot of federal money that we weren't, because the administration had sort of political reasons for not wanting to touch that. But a lot of that money has been taken off the table. So I would imagine, and I did not look into the budget on this, but I would imagine there is an intent to add more money to it over time. It might not be a lot right now, but time I believe it will.
Thank you.
Doug and then Elizabeth.
Just real quick, makes my heart happy that you and Jen are working closely together. There's so many things about what we're trying to do here as a locality that can be frustrated by the Dillon rule and the fact that so much of policy is set by Richmond. And so I think it's great for Arlington County to leverage your knowledge and experience. I'm really glad. I know you probably have a lot of county staff that are trying to get your attention and say, here's my issue, work on me, my issue. And I'm just glad that you're willing to make some time for Jen. So thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, no, Jen makes time for me. And Jen actually, because there were so many bills, 2000 and change that came through, and I read almost all of, at least the summaries of almost all of them, and quite a few of them in full. But at one point early on, I was just like, Jen, I'm going to send you everything about that's in the environment energy space, because I need someone else who I know knows the ins and outs, so you can tell me whether we need to worry about these or not. So yeah, no, it was definitely
That's why we're trying to get Jen more staff too.
Yes.
So she can analyze, her staff can analyze this.
And you all were quite effective in keeping the one empty.
We'll come back to that, but Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for this update. State level is so different from the federal level. This sounds like, I know these are individual bills, but, taken together, this is, I think, as impactful for the state as another Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Like, this is tremendous. I wanted to comment on one piece. The grid utilization bill is getting a lot of national press and attention for being a really innovative way to look at how we can look at the performance of the grid and where we have pockets of capacity and just be smarter about how we're using the overall system. So Virginia is really leading the pack in this. And I think it's a place, to lean in, because we've got a lot of load up here in Arlington. Couple quick questions. One is changes to the new Commission on Energy and the DER task force and weatherization task force. Are these primarily going to be made up of legislators, or are they citizen task forces, or they're going to be more citizen representatives on these boards and commissions and task forces, et cetera?
I would have to look. The task forces generally tend to be like an internal staff sort of thing. So it's like bringing together people within the administration. They almost all have like public comment. So they're almost, I don't want to promise that, but very often they do have public comment and the ability for folks to in the general public to involve themselves. And sometimes they do specify, particularly if it's going to be a commission or like I know, having worked on it in my previous job, like the Clean Energy Investment Fund, Green Bank is what we always colloquially called it. Like that will have a board of directors that makes the judgment calls. So that will be made up. Last I recall, it was citizens appointed. I have to double check this. It was citizens, I think, certain number by the Senate, certain number by the House, certain number by the governor, and in sort of rotating terms. So again, I'd have to double check that exactly how it's structured in the final version, but that one I do recall it being like the goal was like set requirements for what sort of experience people need to have, and then appoint a board of directors who operate.
Okay, if I could just add, I have just HB3, which is the Income Qualified Energy Efficiency and Weatherization Task Force, word for word what they're saying. And so the details aren't there, just sort of backing up Brian. It include a representative from DHCD, Virginia Energy, the Department of Social Services, and at least 10 non-legislative citizen members, and a representative of staff from the new Commission of Energy. They use CEUR still, but
Okay,
so that is, to Brian's point, some of them are really very specific and some are
Okay.
not, but reading between the lines, how can Arlington be represented, or, you know, is there an opportunity? And I think we're gonna look to our fearless legislative liaison to give us guidance on where it makes sense to lean in and where we can, to the extent, right, that
yeah.
the law allows us.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the DER task force. I think this is really a place where we can do a lot of solutioning. I also had a question on the where, can you give us a status update on the data center tax repeal / continuation?
So something's gonna happen.
Okay.
That's about as far as we know right now. The House's bill would have conditioned the existing, or the House's budget proposal would have conditioned the existing tax benefit on meeting certain, like, basically, if you bought the most high-tech, most energy efficient models, then you could get the tax credit. The Senate, and particularly Chair Louise Lucas of the Senate Finance Committee, has said, full stop, she doesn't particularly have an interest in anything short of a full repeal, which is a complicated position. And there's a bunch of spending that is conditioned on that repeal that may be funded with money that might not be there in the long term.
Okay.
Spending patterns change.
So a simple position with complicated outcomes.
And so,
Second order
yes,
impact.
and so I know there was offers made to, like, that have been presented at least to Senator Lucas in, as I recall, it was like something for like 1.1 billion of it. And it had to do, I believe it was conditioned on energy, if I recall. But she has sort of rejected that offhand. She has strong feelings about Nova's treatment versus the rest of the Commonwealth's treatment.
Yeah, okay.
And she feels like this, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I feel relatively confident in saying this because she said it a lot in various other ways. I think she feels like this is an example where, you know, Northern Virginia predominantly, because most data centers are up here, are sort of freeloading on the rest of the state.
From an energy perspective?
Yes, and like the foregone tax revenue, I want to say it's like 1.8 or $1.9 billion is what the.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, and so, but there is, that doesn't stop local taxation of it, which is, you know, Prince William and Loudoun County have, let me put it this way, they did not have to as critically look at their funding shortfalls from recent federal actions as we did, because they have clusters of data centers that pay them quite a bit of local tax.
And I believe they are, if they haven't passed it, proposing a reduction in their tax rate.
Counties, there's a
Prince
reduction,
William.
and it's like
Yeah, it's like.
state tax rate.
Wow.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you should look. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a data centers are a really challenging thing because at being at Vaco and VML, some very like well-meaning, want to do the right thing, like county managers and folks are like, geez, if I get one data center, probably like cover half of my budget. Like in some of these smaller counties, so they're trying to balance that and make sure they're. I think there's a story about a particular locality paying for a brand new school in cash,
Yeah.
off of a data center revenue.
Problem is data centers are like cockroaches. You can't really get just one.
True. Yeah, it is. And that's the long-term prognosis that a lot of people have said, that is you really only get a good economic impact if you have a cluster of them, as opposed to just one. But so it's a tough thing to balance. I think what something that we are going to put forward, not because we have any data centers or aspire to have any, but just in general, is trying to push the state to sort of reimagine how local revenue works. Because currently we have very few and often very complicated levers to push to get revenue, and the easiest one ends up being property taxes. And even within that, there is not a ton of differentiation, like the rate that we can set is very, there are some examples we can set a differential rate. Bill, I forgot to mention on electric lawn care equipment, allowing us to set up a different, like create a different category of property so that we could tax it at a different rate if we wanted to. So that's an interesting one, but that is the exception, not the rule. And so that's the complicated part. And, you know, they talked a lot about wanting to get rid of the car tax. It's another thing. There's a lot of weird revenue streams that are tied up, and, you know, trying to make these big changes to fix it. You know, data centers, I think everyone agrees, like, have grown in a way we didn't anticipate and have a ton of impacts that we're still grappling with, but trying to unwind that from the positive fiscal impact that it has in the localities that have them is a huge challenge. And so our look has been like, hey, is there other ways that we could generate money that don't end up getting tied up in these sort of things and might be cleaner? We're still figuring out how we might want to do that, but that's
Yeah. I think the large load tariff is an interesting place to look as well. And I wonder, is there much discussion at the state level about the impacts of the capacity market on energy prices and how large loads are dealing with that? I know that I've
We're
asked.
gonna have to wind it up. So
Sorry.
Yeah, no. So
I'm sure there's an easy answer to that question.
Simple.
Well, no, I was going to say, I think there is a bit of creativity that they're trying to figure out how to better tackle this. And I think I think what I'll leave it at is the key point is that what you'll notice is that neither side proposed, let's keep the existing tax as it is. Everyone agreed that we need to change some things up. Now they're still arguing about how we're going to change things up. And one might argue that the tax incentive that the House kept in and forcing them to use more updated, to buy more updated tech that is more energy efficient could be enough of a value. There could be a significant value that might offset some of the loss in terms of state revenue. So, and my biggest thing on data centers is that, and this is the last thing I'll say, is that I personally worry that about what is next. My knee-jerk reaction, my dad was an IT guy. It's like, eventually big data center clusters won't be the thing anymore. And I think more than just me, I think a lot of people are thinking about that. Like, how do we build things that are more resilient?
That's a huge issue.
I have a point. Can we have your email if we don't already have it to maybe follow up questions?
Yeah, I will.
Sorry.
You can forward them. I think Rob also has some questions. If you want to collectively forward them to me.
Yeah, we can do it.
Brian.
That's fine.
Yeah,
thank you.
And is there more that you wanted to say about the opportunity holders that you're working on, or you could say no?
Well, I know I'm being cognizant of time, but I'm
Yes.
happy to come back and we can talk a little bit more about this, but plug-in solar, AKA balcony solar.
Yes.
So
Very
just to be
good.
clear, I mean, colloquially, we say balcony solar, but it is plug-in solar, which means it could go on your lawn, for example,
Right.
too. And we have, we were anticipating that this bill would pass. And we were fortunate enough to see that actually happen, which is great for Virginia. It's great for Arlington. And so we have been hosting interdepartmental discussions of just trying to educate ourselves about what this is, what does it mean for Arlington, what's happening in the regulatory space, and and certainly we have there's safety concerns related to particularly balcony solar, and we through a variety of different discussions have hopefully have sort of drafted a pathway to continue to learn about the potential policy that we would bring forward for the board's consideration, number one. But number two, we also have, I'm not going to overstate this, but have some confidence that many of the concerns that our building official has, and potentially other, emergency response folks, may be addressed through a UL review that they're doing, and then require manufacturers to meet certain standards, and therefore that could address, some of our concerns. I will also say one other thing, which is there's more than one way to peel a banana. What's that? That's inappropriate. And so and so we could even explore maybe some short-term, easier accessible options while other more complex issues are being sorted out. So it's not like it's a binary, we have to wait for, certain certifications to occur in order for us to adopt. It might be something where it's more like a phased approach. So that's a very high level, but we think this is really good for Arlington. Obviously, everybody else, right? Looks like from the heads in the room nods. And so we certainly want to prepare ourselves for hopefully being able to consider that, bringing it to the board again for consideration. So
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. Doug.
Thank you very much. So the members of this commission have been sent an email by Lily Diaz, who is not here tonight. She's at the transportation meeting. She's very well educated. She teaches over at the Hopkins School, and she's really smart. She's written this email, and I'm really reading it, and this is very long, very well written, very easy to read, has some very specific ideas. I've asked her for permission to send it to you, Jen. I think you would find it very helpful based on the comments you just made, and it might even be good if you and Lily could sit down together. I think she's recommending that that the date when all this is going to go into effect is January 1st, 2027, and she's recommending that something go to the board well in advance. So when that date hits and everything goes live, that Arlington County is ready to support plug-in balcony solar throughout the county.
They did.
Follow up with you.
Yeah, just please share the information. I'd love to say that the pathway is clear and easy for us to, but it's not for a lack of trying. I mean, we really are trying to move and get ourselves prepared, but there are some significant safety considerations, particularly related to balcony solar, we want to just sort out, which probably have to be addressed by the manufacturer. Doesn't mean that there's only one way that we can get this done, though. So.
And there are some requirements in the bill about things that need to be hammered out.
Yeah.
Prior. So, and again, there's that, and I'll add in, we have a few dozen bills of varying sizes that are going to require us to change our ordinances. So there's talk about runways, like there's a lot of traffic on the runway too, but it is not for a lack of interest in this, because I came on in September and Jen and I were talking about this balcony solar bill because I knew it was coming, because I was working for Delegate Lopez and he was one of the people pitched on carrying this bill. So we knew it was coming, and we've been sort of trying to grapple with it. but obviously the legislation changes on a dime. So until just now, we didn't even fully know what the bill would say. So
One clarification question and on this point. So in the bill, so January 1st is the effective. I think in the bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, it says there's going to be a working group on safety considerations that forms in September and has to have recommendations by November. And it lists all of the entities that should be part of this, including the various departments, Department of Fire Programs, Virginia Association of Realtors, as well as interested stakeholders as determined by the Secretary of State. So if you guys can get onto that committee, that would be very good. That's a very tight window.
But I think, but the point is like if we can, if we have an opportunity, right? But B, if we could be laser like focused on the ones that we can really influence, I think this is a good one. This fits perfectly into our CEP. But there may be others. And so.
This is something that we're always paying attention to in terms of those work groups. I forget what the exact number is. I had it written down because it wasn't bad enough that I read through everything that was introduced. I also reread everything that passed, which was 1,156 bills. And so I have categorized them all, and they're currently with our county attorney's office for further review. But there is, I think, over 100 sort of work groups that I have flagged for our involvement, and just so that our staff knows and can involve themselves. And, one example outside the purview of this entity that we've been working on since I got here is getting one of our staffers in DES, named Angie, who I think has a very good claim to the title, the most significant, the most eminent expert, local government expert in autonomous vehicles in the entire Commonwealth. And we've been trying to make sure that the autonomous vehicle work group has her by, because she was on DC's autonomous vehicle work group. She's on a national one, and she's also been on state work groups on related topics in Virginia. So those are opportunities we're always looking for, and also constantly engaging. That's sort of what we were talking about with the building code stuff, is like how we can make sure people are getting that, especially Arlington's, staff, but also Arlington's residents are getting onto these on these bodies, because we have, yeah.
There are things that you need that.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And you're welcome to stay. Maybe there'll be more time for it. But you also.
I do have to run.
Yeah. And Jen is staying.
Yeah, Jen very much so knows how to find me.
Yes. Thank you. I want to welcome Susan Cunningham, our board member, and our C2E2 liaison. And I think, and thanks all for that good discussion. I think the next topic on our agenda is the budget follow-up. We had sent a letter about the budget, how the budget has now been passed. It's been I was asked to testify. The commission chairs were all offered the opportunity to testify. And I went in to testify, and I thought it would be the parade of commissioners. We each had 5 minutes, and that we would just all, Doug was watching on live TV, should make me feel better necessarily. But I thought we would read our 5 minutes, but in fact, the board engaged us in a lot of, at least me, in a lot of discussion. And one of the things that they asked me is whether we get a quorum. So I'm happy to say that every single person, Susan, every single person is here except for the two who are at an SPRC and the Transportation Commission, respectively. So
amazing. C2E2 always hits it out of the park.
we felt we were carrying out our charter and general, and also a lot of good questions about development in Arlington and things that went far. It was a really great opportunity to have a conversation that I was really not expecting to have, but thank you anyway. But one of the things that came up was that the county board members asked us to come up with some budget guidance, and the budget was about to be considered. So I I just wrote it and shared it with Rob and Elizabeth, and Doug was not available, but I just sent it to Doug as media past chair, or past vice chair. Anyway, so I sent that in. It was very much influenced by the 3 advocacy groups here, Eco Action, Sierra Club, and Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, which had also, of their own volition, circulated budget guidance. And I see that the budget guidance, so I circulated that for this meeting. You can see what it was. The things that we had talked about. So in my testimony, I talked about the things we talked about in our letter, which, just to refresh your recollection, was staffing, as Doug mentioned earlier. And the fact that the climate resolution talked about having a climate budget framework sort of integrated throughout which definitely progress was made on, but we were hoping for more. And then the third thing was, how are we going to spend the climate action fund, which still had $1.5 million in it, and wanting to get that money out there. And the budget guidance, the board has passed budget guidance. I see that last week. I know time flies. I just see it online, but all of those issues. So I circulated what we sent in, and I see that all of those issues are in the budget guidance that was passed. And as Jen just alluded to, one of the things about staffing, we were hoping for more staffing. There had been a position in the climate policy office, Jen's office, that had been eliminated. And we were able, and again, I want to thank the advocacy organizations too. We all worked together. We met individually with every county board member, and they have restored that position starting halfway through the year to sort of save money. Won't have it all year. But so we were very excited. And, I want to also thank Doug, who sent a letter in November asking for staffing.
C2E2 letter.
Yeah, it wasn't C2E2 letter. Doug prepared the letter for us and has really had his eye on this. So it's really great to feel heard and to be invited to talk and to get a lot of questions and have a lot of interest in how C2E2 is functioning. And I think that, I don't know, Doug, if you had anything that you wanted to add, you watched me on TV.
Well, great. I was, I'm a critic, and it's like, I would not have answered those questions any differently than you did. You had perfect answers every time, so it
High praise.
represented C2E2 as well as we could possibly have been represented, and I appreciate it. And
That's not why I called on you just to, but thank you.
So, overall though, yes, we saved a vacant position, as long as she waits until January to fill it. Sort of, I guess, a win. But, our main point was we needed to add 2 positions to C2 to the air team. And in fact, air team had lost a position. So they were down to 5. So we really didn't get that at all. And it was never even close, I don't think. So, I don't really look at this whole budget cycle as a big win. I'm kind of frustrated and unhappy. We just saw an email that came out from the county today that, they announced $1.7 million in housing subsidies going to 12 different organizations. And housing is great, but the county spends 6% of its budget, $98 million on housing subsidies. And we're talking about maybe $300,000 or $400,000 for this or that out of the Climate Action Fund, which is one-time money. So when I kind of compare those, I don't really see that the county really is willing to do much as far as climate. And maybe that's because the citizens of Arlington County are not pounding on their board members to do something about climate. But that's the world we live in right now.
Cindy, can you go over again what the approved uses of the Climate Action Fund ended up being?
What is in, let's see, so the budget guides, let's see. It says that, so the budget guidance that was passed by the county board is that the manager is directed to report back to the board as soon as feasible, but no later than the fall of this year with proposed allocations, including discussions of alternatives. And we had initially had language very much like that. And I was asked to give very specific ideas. And so I did. And we said, pilot to help existing buildings with energy assessments and potentially direct financial incentives, residential support and assistance pilot. And some of these items have definitely been being discussed in the art team already. Residential support, technical advice and coaching for homeowners, education outreach, financial support such as free programmable Wi-Fi thermostats, free LED light bulbs, water saving shower heads, purchase of a large battery for community center or school to aid in climate
And
resilience.
these were things that
Right, and many of these were, I guess.
Alexandria is doing.
Right, and we
Right.
pointed that out, and for
Alexandria's programs. All right.
multifamily communities, EV chargers. So they asked for specific ideas and we provided specific ideas, which I felt bad sending this without running by the whole commission. But we talked about a lot of these things before, but we did, and time just didn't allow for it. So we'll see what happens. But one of the things that the advocacy groups put in their guidance that I took out, it was just to put in ours, I took it out, was that feedback from C2E2 and the Energy Committee should be sought on the budget process. I thought that was pretty obnoxious of us to say, hey, before you do anything, you have to run it by us. So I didn't put it in, but the board, but it was put into the final guidance by the county board. So
if there are opportunities to advocate for potential expenditures in the Climate Action Fund, I think that might be a bigger project that we could maybe take on and make some suggestions to the county manager as well. But the Climate Action Fund doesn't automatically replenish.
Right.
Right. So if we spend, if we spend money, it should either, be replenished or, I think my first choice would be that it's put to good use and then replenished. My second choice would be that it is, put to good use. My least favorite choice is if it is kind of spent to be spent and like frittered away on things that are maybe achievable and doable, but not impactful.
Right. And I think that's right. And also, one of the things that I thought they might choose to do is, Jen's office is in the process of developing a climate action plan, which is also on the agenda. And I thought there'd be a desire to save it and just not spend it, but urgency. So I'm adding that into your list, that don't just sit on it either.
Cindy, also 2 comments.
Okay, well, I'll go to Doug and then,
Just real quick, following up on that on the climate action plan. So the
Doug,
1,147 page budget document that the county put out that talked about all the different budget stuff for all the different parts of the county. Didn't say anything about the climate action fund. And so that was like, and so then I'm watching on TV and I wasn't even planning to be watching this particular aspect of the budget discussions.
the work session.
And here, the work session, thank you. And here's Stephen Burr coming on saying, well, here's what we're proposing to do with the climate action fund. I'm like, holy crap, I better write this down. And I took a screenshot of the slide and it came totally out of nowhere. And nobody in the 3 environmental groups that Cindy mentioned had any inkling of this. And I told everybody as soon as I saw it, like, well, this is pretty interesting. I think everybody would want to know about this. So it's from a process point of view. I wasn't really happy and I was surprised and disappointed that county staff was handling this in that fashion.
Well, so the process has not been clear and clarifying the process, but Susan, sorry, I didn't see you up there before. I thought you had your hand up, but please.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna add a little bit of texture to it. So I believe, and Jennifer's still in the room, I assume, yes. If you're ready. I can't see you because I'm on my phone and you're all very small. Hi. The manager's message, which is like the first 30 pages of the budget book, did have 2 pages on climate. And then Jennifer and I had been working with staff to try to get more into the budget, as you guys had recommended, and we are on a multi-year journey to get there. So when not every department had much in the budget book about climate or about the Climate Action Fund or just how their work intersects. What you see, and you should have seen in almost every work session, we asked, as we do with equity, we asked each department to come and talk about how they're thinking about climate and where they're making some actions. And so in the Climate Action Fund specifically, if you remember, the genesis of that was 2 years ago when we had some funding and we very much didn't want to just spend it to spend it. We wanted it to be really high impact. And so we made it multi-year funding to allow that to happen, to allow us to get Jennifer in place, to allow the climate action plan to get started, and then to be able to use it in various pieces there. So, so it's sort of a mix, and I think, that's not all the money we're spending on climate for sure. All of the work at AIR, all the work in DES, all the work in, methane recovery at the sewage treatment plant, all the electrification of our buildings, of our vehicle fleet, those are not all counted under climate action. They're just counted under operations. And as we pivot in the next couple of weeks to the capital side of the house, that's another place that we should think about. How do we make sure your eyes are on that, both for us and for the schools to some extent, which we give them money but have only so much say about things. But I think a lot of those opportunities are also in the capital side.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think there is a lot more to come on this. Lily.
Hello to everybody. Sorry I missed the first hour. I just had a question about the governing rules for the Climate Action Fund, because I really don't know what are the rules that govern the fund. Like Elizabeth mentioned, whether the fund was replenished or not, and also whether there are limitations to the proposals that can be put forward for the use of the funds, and whether this is the mechanism that will be used going forward to fund all the activities and programs that will be I assume will be included in the climate action plan.
So I'll start and others can chime in. No, I think it was set up, we were lobbying, we C2E2 and advocacy groups were lobbying for climate money. There was money available to set aside. It was $3 million. Half of it's been spent. There is not a current commitment to replenish it. We would love to see that, and I've been asking for that, but there, as Susan was saying, there's a lot happening that is not being paid for out of the Climate Action Fund. So I think that, in fact, I'd like to see the Climate Action Fund used for pilots to try things out, and then as they're successful, they get moved into operations and get right into the operating budget. Also, the capital budget, which is coming up, talk about later in this meeting, is another great source of funds for longer term projects. But what counts, what should be spent on the climate action, what counts as climate projects that could be spent out of the Climate Action Fund? We have had some disagreements about that. And the county's been pretty receptive to our thoughts. When there was a sense about, resilience, using, putting in a gas generator in a building to increase climate resilience. We're like, no, let's not use a gas generator. Let's use the Climate Action Fund for a gas generator. But you raise a good question. That's why we were putting in these specific ideas of what it can be used for. And so is the AIR team, absolutely. And as Doug said, they have put out some, and others are being discussed as well.
But were Steve Burr's proposals accepted and decided by the board? He had three.
No.
One was the e-bike thing, and I can't remember the other two. Are those just still up in the air now?
So what the budget guidance passed by the board that was actually passed, I have so many drafts of mine and theirs, but I think this is the one that was actually passed. It says these funds are intended for urgent climate funding priorities such as community-facing programs designed to reduce carbon emissions, promote energy affordability, should be allocated without waiting for the completion of a new climate action plan. Okay, Therefore, the manager is directed to report back to the board as soon as feasible, no later than the fall of this year, with the proposed allocations, including alternatives to be paraphrasing.
Okay.
So I would say it has not been decided.
Steve had his 3 ideas.
He had his ideas.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's up in the air right
It's still
now.
up in the air.
Okay,
Well, yes,
thanks.
but should,
Yeah, and I would just echo that, like, it's, this wasn't intended, at least in its current form, not that there couldn't be another form. It wasn't intended like our housing investment fund, for instance, that, is a permanent fund that has specific guidelines and gets replenished. It was really intended to be a bridge while we got the climate office working and while we got the climate action plan. And I think ideally out of that comes exactly like you said, Cindy, as much as possible should be operationalized, because everything that we're doing in the county should have a climate lens to it. But then there may be some ongoing pocket of money. It may be called a climate action fund, or it may just be AIR's, ongoing funding that's available for pilots and for doing new stuff as well.
Should C2E2, sorry, 1 second, Lily. Should C2E2 put together some recommendations, like a list
turn
of,
this and other ideas into a formal letter.
I think, yeah, to send something to the county manager I think that would be helpful to him to have that kind of feedback from C2E2.
Yeah, and I guess, Jen, I might defer to you on like what the various stages are there, because I think ideas are welcome at all times, and climate action plan is going to be, growing some of those ideas as well. And then some of them will pop off sooner. So I don't know if you want to share any thoughts about how you would see that being most productive.
In the short term, I mean, I think the board's asking for some guidance on what it is. I think if there are recognizing that we have a much bigger planning effort where we're going to be identifying the rocks/boulders.
Yeah.
But if there are, and I think, I mean, I recognize, Cindy, you had mentioned that in the list, the draft that you put together, that AIR had already been talking about some of these programs. I think it's useful in the context of, what we can do now, and recognizing that there may be other types of projects that are coming down the pike as a result of the climate action plan. I certainly want to hear managers like me would like to hear your thoughts on what would be a useful investment to bridge, not to use Ms. Cunningham's words again, but like to bridge us to the climate action plan. And yeah, I would just leave it at that. I don't know if there's any other.
I'm kind of thinking about like 150, 200K for like a feasibility study on DER aggregation, the co-op idea that we've been talking about. What would that look like? How many DERs are currently in Arlington County? What kind of megawatt would we be looking for? What are the mechanisms? Like some numbers that like we're not capable of doing, that there's no business entity that's really able to do that, but I've been putting some analytics on it.
I want to come back to that. I want to call in Rob and then Lily and then Doug.
Yeah.
And anybody else I can't see down there.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, just to make a plug for some analytical framework for assessing these various ideas. I mean, we obviously want them all to be impactful in terms of greenhouse gas emissions per dollar, but then there's other factors. If it's a pilot, is it community facing, is one of the things that's written into the map, right? So several things that we have to assess simultaneously. Given the small amount of money and the tight time frame, we can't have analysis paralysis here, but we can set up a pretty basic framework to help you, Jennifer, and Steve and others kind of figure out, okay, how do we rack and stack these various ideas of various amounts and come up with something that's reasonable that we know is going to contribute in the near term. So just a plug to put a little bit of analysis behind this, not just whoever's screaming the loudest gets the idea.
Right.
I would say that if you're thinking about, what that sort of framework might look like, think about how we would be able to execute something in a short amount of time, right? So it's we may have to do, that's why I'm thinking like in the climate action plan, we are going to be modeling a lot of recommendations, right?
Okay.
So if there are recommendations that require doing additional analysis, even to determine whether or not it's a good investment, I might say, well, maybe you hold off on that.
Okay.
But I also don't want to discourage good ideas. So I just want to be cautious and say, that's the lens that I'm looking at, because if we're expected to spend this money soon, but we have to spend, and then the other piece of this, I'm sort of putting my Jason Papacosma hat on this, is that he has a slate of projects that he's working on. So how does that complement? How does that,
Sure.
what type of, is there an impact on resources? Not that you're going to know all of this, but just that would be a lens that I would have, and I'm sure you.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Lily.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that perhaps we could have a broad view of kind of an idea of governance of these funds, to perhaps allocate some to these analyses that are needed, this information that is needed to figure out where to best focus efforts with Elizabeth's idea. But I also think that it is important to actually develop projects that provide a benefit, a real benefit quickly to the population, because you need to show some result. And I was very encouraged by all this excitement that I heard at Climate Week in DC about balcony solar, and I wrote a quite lengthy note to you. And I spoke with Susan at the Eco Extravaganza event about this, and the other board member, because I do think that if we have a pilot on something like this that is very low-hanging fruit, that is almost ready, and that requires 6 to 8 months of planning to see if we can get it together, we may be able to help people who are renters, low-income households, to reduce their energy bills at a time where systems are crashing and people are really having problems with affordability. So I think that we should consider measures that are short-term and that are results-oriented, and then other things that are for planning for the future. But the money should be directed where we can get some short-term impact, and it doesn't have to be a large quantity. I am all for pilots, because pilots are low risk and they are manageable, and you can actually scale them if they are like superior performance, and you get more value out of the investment you put in. If not, the risk is very small. But we should start somewhere. And if I compare the size of the budget of Arlington and the size of the climate fund allocation today, with the efforts that we could make, and that other jurisdictions competing for businesses and residents with Arlington are putting forward, I think that we are in that stage of analysis paralysis. And I don't know. That's how I feel. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Lily. And I think before you were on, Doug actually mentioned your letter and offered to, and described it on Bouncy Solar. I'm going to share it. So we appreciate the time that you spent on it, and it's getting traction and legs. Doug, did you have something else? Okay. Any other? Okay. So a lot of budget excitement, and once again, I feel like C2E2 was heard. This budget guidance directly reflects what we had proposed. We were asked to propose it. We think of doing it on our own. So I really appreciate that. And I mentioned that, we go back to Lecky Gardens, which was an SPRC we talked about the last month, where the county board members took a lot of action and got some real change based on some of the issues that we had raised. I mentioned that to set that up because we have a couple of SPRCs going now that have been interesting. And I will start with, and Susan, I invite you to speak to chime in whenever you would like. But we'll start with Waverly Ridge as one where we talked about this one last month. We've talked about it for the last 2 months as one where the developers were unwilling. It's a townhouse development. The developers argued there isn't really any clear standard that applies to townhouses, and we can't really, there's nothing that we can really do. And then we asked for a lot of specific questions and didn't get answers. And David ended up going to the meeting as, Melissa couldn't go and then Rob couldn't go, and thank you, David. But then we got a lot of support from the Planning Commission on Waverly Ridge, and I really appreciate that. So I don't know which of the two of you would like to talk about that one to kick it off.
Considering we have to make up time, and I'm not going to take the 15 minutes. I'll do the 3-minute version here just to refresh everyone's memory on what happened with this, and then David and Susan can chime in as well. So David went to the SPRC2. There was no sustainability documentation uploaded to the county website for this particular project. We noted that in advance. They didn't address it at SPRC2. I then went to the Planning Commission. All the process filed publicly. They still didn't have any sustainability documentation up there. They claimed it's because, again, it's townhouses. No, they didn't do Lead for Homes. They didn't want to do anything that was too expensive. And but they said they did have some sustainability attributes built in, but they didn't upload any documents and just talked about it. So talked to some of the developers on the way out. And by the way, the county staff was opposing this project on somewhat related grounds, but mostly because it Langston Boulevard area plan. So between us and the county staff opposing, then the developer emailed us with some of the sustainable attributes, not enough to do a full scorecard on, but at least they're trying, and they're trying to put something in. So David and I will likely try to work with the county and the developer. In the meantime, it was supposed to be brought up at the board meeting last Saturday, or a week ago Saturday, and this was deferred. I think in the hopes that that our commission and county staff and the developer can get together and not necessarily present a unified vision, but at least have some common attributes that we can talk to about the sustainability documentation for this. So I want to pause there. Maybe unless you have anything else to say on this.
All I would just say really quickly is, and we can potentially talk about it later, but I was also pinch hitting for another project with the exact same issue.
And let's come back to that. So
the only point I was going to make is we can't do our jobs without the data. And I really appreciate the support that the board and the commission have provided to us in acknowledging that's a real issue. So I just wanted to say thank you.
And so we had sent a letter saying on Waverly Ridge saying there is no information, and we think the process should be changed so that if no information is provided, they don't go through the SPRCs. And so what we got was this delay with thanks to the board. I also want to count out that the chair of the Planning Commission, Nia Bagley, who is also happened to be the chair of that particular SPRC, Waverly Ridge, really pressed the developers herself, which was great to see that kind of support. And in fact, raised the issue of the Planning Commission not advancing the project. And so it was very controversial at the Planning Commission. And she also sent several notes to us. And it was just great to see that our issues get that kind of attention. Which now brings us, David, to your.
Do you want to see if Susan wants to chime in on this?
Susan, did you want anything?
I was just going to I know you guys are pressed for time, so it won't take long, but I would just say, I think on Waverly Ridge in particular, there was a letter that should have come to you earlier. Like they had done a lot of that work, but hadn't, I think in the kerfuffle around, the plan and the staff concerns on other topics, it just hadn't gotten across the finish line. So I think the good news is the developers are also learning alongside all of us. And I think we'll have that muscle memory next time. And Cindy, you all have that list of kind of commitments as of last week, right?
Right.
Yes, but we still find that insufficient, Susan, just to be clear. I mean, just saying Energy Star is bullet, it's not enough. It's not enough to fill out our scorecard. we want to see these commitments, and we want the county to be able to hold them to
Yep.
those commitments and get a little bit more detail. They said they're not going to do the energy modeling, which is kind of standard, using portfolio manager, and that they're not going to do that individually for 47 townhomes, but they could do one for one townhome and kind of
Right.
there's something in between aside from just giving us a bulleted list saying, hey, we're going to install some, electric
Yeah.
EV chargers, right?
Yeah, that's great. So would welcome that feedback. And I just also emphasize that that project and some of the adaptive reuse projects and others are like going to press us a little bit because they're site plan projects, but they're not normal site plan projects. And for a site plan project, the other big issue is that our standard conditions for site plan have not been updated, and those are coming, and you guys are right to be pressing on them. And the manager says they'll be by the end of the calendar year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I think that would have also at least taken the edge off a little bit. Like you wouldn't be arguing about the most basic things because it would be written down already. So there's a lot of pieces there, but I do think we're moving forward and really appreciate you guys continuing to push.
Thank you. And that is great about the site conditions because you're absolutely right. That is critical. So then you guys all saw that Joe was unable to go, although just to be clear, Joe's been to about 1 million SPRC meetings, but wasn't able to go to this one. And I was unable to go. So on Thursday, David walked in with a beautiful list of questions. Amazing list of questions from Joe at the second SPRC meeting without a lot of background. And there just wasn't enough time, which happens at the SPRC's lot. Sustainability is the last issue on the last meeting. And so it was a frustrating experience. And since then, the chair of that SPRC has sent a lovely note saying, sorry, there's some more time. The developers have said, let's get together. We know you didn't get your questions. So although it felt similar, these developers, I think, really are going to. So over to you, David.
So, I want to make sure Joe can speak as well, because this is not my project. I was just pinch hitting. Yes, they seem to jump in and be responsive. And Joe, I just realized during this meeting, they sent the email to me and Rob, and they didn't include you. So I forwarded that email to you, offering to answer the questions, which I think is great. And I think it goes back to what Rob was saying before. I don't think it's reasonable for us to be in this position of having to kind of claw back and run as these meetings are coming up to catch up. I think it needs to be the clear responsibility of the developers to get us this information ahead of time, to make it public. I mean, this is a public process. It shouldn't just be in emails to us. It should be on the county website. It should be public information, and we should have enough time to actually evaluate it, and the staff should as well. And so I just want to double down on the recommendation that these meetings shouldn't be happening until all the information is there. It's not fair to the volunteers. It's not fair to the Arlington County residents. And it's just not in line with the process.
Lisa.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission has the same exact frustration with sustainability being the last topic. I don't get to it. And so at their last meeting, they were saying it would be really helpful for Forestry and Natural Resources, C2E2, and Parks and Rec to maybe like touch base beforehand and game plan, like what are the top questions we want to ask if there's only a limited amount of time, and just kind of strategize and game plan together. Your suggestion of having everything online beforehand, I think, is even better, but just wanted to share that the frustrations are felt elsewhere as well.
I would just add, I have an honest question. Those meetings are 2 hours. Is that statutory? Why do they? I don't want to spend lots of time in meetings either, but if this issue keeps happening, it seems like if it's not a legal time limit, it seems like there's an artificial boundary being put on
It's just hard, everybody's been at work all day, and then you go to a meeting from 7 to 9, and I know people try to, and I think we should think about the process sort of holistically, like how do we get in earlier? Should we be meeting separately with the developers? Should we be exchanging letters with the county, through the county staff, or somehow we just can't let it always be the last issue. It's less of the meetings. We can have 2 hours just on sustainability for most of these. So it's, Joe.
But I would count, yeah, and we could, I'd counter with the chairs have a lot of discretion when they run these meetings. And they do a thankless job on the planning commission, but they do have a lot of discretion, and you will end up spending an entire hour on the parking, the street lights outside. And then they said, sustainability, we don't have time for that. You gotta move on. And so they've done that to me in many a times. There's also kind of maybe a training or notification that needs to be kind of with the planning commission about a level of expectation of technical speak at these meetings. I've gotten cut off before from the chair within like 30 seconds of my time saying, these are very technical questions. We shouldn't go through it. Like, you can send these afterwards. And then basically it's first, I would just say it's my time. I can speak as long as I want, but so I think there's some kind of training there that needs to happen. So there's less discretion maybe from the chair.
It's difficult. He has a chair. It's a difficult question. But I think making, one of the things we've said often at these meetings is every developer should have a copy of the scorecard in advance and know that we're going to try to get that. And we've said that, and we've, posted it, but I think they're still caught by surprise. So it's not happening, and we should figure out maybe how to make that happen.
Maybe they're. Lily's got her hand up.
Lily?
Oh, yes, I was just going to suggest something that worked for me, which is that when I noticed that there was not a place for sustainability, or it was at the bottom of the pile, I just emailed the county person and I copied everybody that I knew was related to that specific SPRC. And I said, could I please make sure, could I please have an intervention of this amount of time, and could you make sure that this is in the agenda? And that way I just assure the portion of time. And then what I did was to, instead of having highly technical questions, I had a lot of questions and I read them very, very quickly because they are in the record. And because they are in the record, I am entitled to an answer by the developer. And I can actually email the developer after and request an answer. Sorry about my dog.
I've had good luck with writing to the developers separately and getting answers, although I agree with David's point that it should all be public information.
I've had them not respond before, so they don't always respond. So when they say reply afterwards, it doesn't guarantee anything.
Right. So, yeah, I think it only works if you do it before, early on. We've talked about having developers come to SPRC with the Transportation Commission. And we've said that's a lot of extra meetings for us. Can we really get a quorum? Are we really all going to get up to speed on these projects? And, I think that's a fair question, because there are a lot of projects and a lot of other issues for us to discuss. And I wonder if we can do it with some of these, making sure, maybe we can get them to fill out the scorecard for us as part of the original paperwork or something like it.
Instead of doing individual meetings with developers, can we call them in to just go over our scorecard? Is that what you're saying?
They could come to these monthly meetings, but that would take we keep our meetings from 7 to 9. It's statutory.
No, I'm talking about kind of a training on the scorecard for developers outside of this time, just separately for them, rather than dealing with each SPRC individually, just kind of talking to any developer that has a current project and saying, here's the scorecard, here's how we assess it, for if you do show them an example, and that way we hit all the developers at once, if they're willing to show up and come to it.
Yeah, I wonder if they would be. Actually, because we don't have enough to hold over their heads.
Well, we do if NIA and the planning commission says, unless you submit this scorecard in advance, you won't get to SPRC2 and your project won't move, right? And I think we have an advocate there, and it's part of the site plan conditions, and you have to have the sustainability documentation. So if you're not going to submit it, your project's not going to move. They'll pay attention.
Why doesn't county staff provide our scorecard to the developers?
I mean, I think the idea of it being part of the standard site plan condition is an interesting one, like, that as we're revising the site plan, can we articulate for the different types of projects that have been a little bit challenging? Like, I think a townhouse or a set of single family homes is just a different kind of developer, and we're educating them a little differently. But if you had a like, hey, here's the, 5 typical projects and what we expect of you when, or what is most successful if you do when, I think the developers would be willing to consider that. And then Jennifer, you and I need to talk a little bit about on the staff side, how do we reinforce that within our planning team?
So this will be an issue, I'm sure. Thank you, Susan. And I think this will be an issue we'll continue to discuss. And I love the idea of the standard site plan conditions and getting help from the developers. Clearly, we're catching them by surprise now, whether we think we should be or not. And that's not working for us. So we need to work on our process from our end and making sure that that doesn't happen as much as it's happening now. But in terms of next steps on these specific projects, so our next meeting is in only 3 weeks. It's May 18th because of Memorial Day. That's why it's so early. I think the county board will be considering these projects soon. But I hope we'll have time to get letters on Waverly Ridge after we have all this new information. And maybe a letter on the Spire as well after we get that new information. And then, David, I don't know about Alexa Courthouse.
So yes, the project that actually is mine.
Right.
They actually have provided a fair amount of sustainability documentation. And I do have some outstanding questions, but that one's been a very different experience so far. But I still would like to better understand how to get the information. I asked the questions at the meeting, and I don't know how to get the information I need, but that has definitely been a better process, and a letter will definitely be very feasible for that one.
Good. And, may not be able to chase down every last nuance of everything, but we can get enough to do a fair assessment. I think we want to do fair and consistent across projects. But yeah, I think the best thing is emailing staff and copying the developer, or emailing developer and copying staff. I don't see that. I haven't seen that one of those works better than the other. But I think it's important to keep both parties in the loop, the county staff and the developer, as we need more information. So look for more action on all these things. I won't be here on the May 18th meeting, so Rob will be chairing. I'll be out of the country, or on my way out of the country, so sorry about that. But hopefully we'll have a lot of SPRC letters to consider, and hopefully things will be going smoothly. So anything more about this? I think we can make up some time on, which is good, I see. Climate action plan. We had the kickoff meeting. I sent around the list of the people who are on that. Elizabeth is chair of the energy committee, and me as chair of this. C2E2, we're on it. There are a lot of environmental groups and advocates on it. There's some developers, and Chamber of Commerce. Yep. So there is some business representation. We had a wonderful kickoff meeting led by Rich, who may still be on. And I sent out the PowerPoint, but it really was a chance to lay out what the whole process will be and what to expect. One of the things that was really emphasized is that those of us who are on the working group are intended to bring all the feedback from the people, that we're supposedly representing. So we will be seeking that feedback at every meeting, because we're supposed to have 12 meetings of this advisory group, and the climate action plan is supposed to be put together in about 12 to 18 months. So 18 to 2 years.
No, 18 to 24 months.
18 to 24 months. So I don't know that there's a lot more that we need to say. I appreciate Elizabeth's contributions in particular. There was this very cool use of meeting technology where questions were asked. It wasn't just that you vote yes or no. You could really put in short answers, but there was a big group, and then they formed word clouds, and you could see what was needed. And That was great.
That's
That
cool.
would be great.
Mentimeter.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of public engagement, a lot of chance for input. So moving right along, the capital improvement plan is where the county does every 2 years, updates its 10-year capital plan. And we will need to think about feedback on that, but the first step will be for the county to put out a proposal, as I understand it. And then we will need volunteers to review that proposal and look at putting together what our comments would be. I know Doug and Henry did the budget, so maybe other people would like to do the CIP, not. But I'm not pressing for volunteers today, but I will be. Are there any questions about?
I would like Energy Committee to be involved with the CIP as well. A number of our recommendations from last year have implications for the CIP.
Right. You sort of volunteered to do this, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love a buddy. If anybody else would like to join in.
Yeah.
Cindy, what's the scope of the capital? Is it literally any capital project across the county, or is it specific to a certain type of infrastructure? No, it's anything,
it's
transportation
the
included?
whole
Yeah,
thing.
okay.
Yep.
Energy.
So I did circulate the link to the letter we did 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
and there is a whole, whoop, Jenna had pulled up, there's a whole website on the capital improvement plan where you can get more background. And there's the letter that we sent last time. So just thinking about that. Joe.
It says we're in the county manager feedback phase. Is there actually a survey? I didn't see one on there.
Yeah, I took it. There's a link. I sent it around.
It's very high level.
Yeah.
It's on the website, but it's just sort of like, what areas would you like to prioritize with respect to streets? And then you can kind of.
Yeah, but it actually talks a lot.
It's like-
It says it has a decent amount of background about, based on feedback we've already got, here are some things we're not gonna do with this, we're not gonna put in. So I thought it was interesting.
Do you see the link up there, Jenna? Because I don't. They take it down?
They didn't want to hear from me.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, I think it ended on the 23rd for the public comment period. You can still email the board and there'll be hearings and that sort of stuff, but the survey is closed.
There will be other chances, I promise, in this process, because it's a big deal and a long process. That's why they only do it every 2 years. So let's do a couple of quick approvals. Anybody have comments on the March meeting summary that Jenna put together? I put my comments in. Yeah. So if not, can I have a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, thank you. And also Elizabeth sent around earlier today, the resume of, not much earlier today, but
Sorry.
resume of someone who has applied to join the Energy Committee, and which she would like us to appoint. Looks good. And has been coming to Energy Committee meetings.
And this will put us at capacity for the Energy Committee according to our current charter. We do have a couple folks who have not been coming to as many meetings that I plan to reach out to, but Doug and I interviewed Jason. He's been showing up to meetings. He's got a background in electric utility regulatory matters, very helpful for our sort of technical focus. So I would ask that the commission appoint him to the Energy Committee.
Sign him up.
Yeah, coming from a committee, we don't need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you guys. Okay, and that brings us to, so I know I just whipped through that Climate Action Plan Advisory Group. Dan, is there anything more you would like to say?
How much time?
5 minutes.
Okay, I just want to stay on track. She runs a tight ship, so.
I'm seeing that statutory 2-hour limit very first.
So just as a reminder to folks, Rich Dooley, who's our Director of Climate Policy, he is our project manager and is doing yeoman's work, getting us sort of up and running and keeping us on our timeline, which we really do want to make this quick, but thoughtful. And Cindy mentioned, we have great plans for public engagement. We want to meet people where they are. That doesn't just mean having one open house. We really want to get out into the community. So I think that's going to be a big focus of that. You heard Brian earlier talk about environmental justice being a requirement for updates to the comp plan elements. Good news, we were already planning that. In fact, that's meeting number 3 for, oh, it's me, sorry, the Climate Action Plan Advisory Group. And we very much intend, consistent with the county's resolution on equity, intend on incorporating that throughout the recommendations. So sort of stepping back, something really cool is we have branded the process, the climate action plan process. Everything that we're doing is about access and approachability, right? We want voices engaged in the planning process. So we've branded the process as Arlington Climate Together Act. So we get that government has a role to play in this work, but we are not the only ones. We need everyone in the game. And so the whole concept is that we are communicating that we are together in this work, that there's a sense of urgency. And it's also kind of cool because we can use it for any number of communications devices. One other thing, you'll see the color banner that actually represents every single color in our comp plan wheel. There's 12 comp plan elements. We mean what we say. This is an integrated plan. We will be looking into the comp plan elements that exist, not just the community energy plan. We're expanding the scope. So we'll be looking at, say, the zero waste management plan and what can we uplift from that plan, as an example, to incorporate it into the climate action plan. So this just gives us a visual representation that the climate action plan looks at all of our comp plan elements and tries to tie it together in the whole of government, whole of community spirit, right? What else? Yeah, and just as a reminder on scope, we're doing 2 things, right? Climate mitigation is great, but we also have to look at adaptation and resilience. And so we are planning for 2 futures, one now, and that will continue, and then mitigating the most harmful effects of climate change, or our contribution, scope 1, scope 2, to climate change. So I think that's it. I mean, you did a great job sort of introducing it. I will also say we will, if you would like, we would like to actually come and present to the C2E2. There are several commissions that we will be making a sort of regular appearance, C2E2 being only one of them. So in addition to Elizabeth and Cindy coming to get feedback on the more sort of off times, there will be critical milestones where we will seek your guidance in person as well. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
That's
And
great.
then
I love that.
yeah, I'm not sure if Rich is still on, but if I missed anything, I'm sure he would chime in. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Rich, anything? Okay. Well, Jen, why do you have the
Nope,
floor?
she covered it well.
Okay, well, thank you, Rich. So tell us about the update on the corporate climate leaders.
This is the type of stuff that makes you want to come to work every day. So in addition to the climate action plan, I might add, corporate climate leaders, if you recall, about in the fall, the county board approved an agreement with Series, CERES. I always say that just because it's not clear. They are a global nonprofit based in Boston, and their primary goal is to support business sustainability. They provide unlock all these resources for really Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies to support their sort of sustainability journey. They are providing those resources to Arlington businesses for free as part of this partnership. So the corporate climate leaders, our very first executive committee meeting was today. We have representatives from JLL, Verdantis, Amazon, the Chamber, and others who are helping to help us design what the program look and feel is, right? I actually opened the meeting saying, the 9 scariest words, as we all, this quote in the English language is, "I'm from government and I'm here to help." And we're not in their seats. We don't see what they see. And so if we're going to do this right, we want to make sure that we're engaging our business leaders, both from their, particularly those who have sort of charted this course. JBG Smith is also in this group, and can give us not only sound advice about the types of resources and content that we should be bringing to these businesses, but also hopefully even to mentor other businesses that are looking to continue to advance. And so it was incredibly positive conversation, and we learned a fair amount, actually, which is what happens when you get everyone in the room and start talking about what's working, what's not working. And so we really look forward to not only, again, starting this network, but also the potential partnerships and other types of ways that we can engage with the business community that we just haven't unlocked yet. So.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, again, very much a part of the whole community is bringing in the business. It's very exciting, and we've been hearing about it as it's gone from an idea to today, the first meeting. So that's great.
Were you aware of this nonprofit before?
So do you know, it's funny. Rich knew of them through a leadership working group that he was involved in. I had seen it in advertising, like they do heavy advertising. And so it was sort of a lucky opportunity where we were in the market for a partner.
Yeah.
And had actually shopped around to a couple of other people, just seeing if there was even an opportunity to partner with the locality, and Ceres was interested. They had never done it before. I know that's not what you asked, but basically,
yeah.
And because they have very big fish that they're working with, Nike and eBay and all of the likes.
Seems like we get huge operating leverage out of that. That would have been tough to scale ourselves. I mean,
Well, exactly. I mean, we did benchmarking across the country looking at green business programs. And one of the things that we noticed pretty quickly was that it's like restaurants, right? Like, most of them fail. And the ones that continue, that have lasting power, have either incredible resources, or they have like universities behind them or something that's providing the content. And I joke, but it's like not actually funny. You don't want to hear from me in my little JV presentation about what you big business should be doing. We needed to find, our problem was we needed to find resources that could be shared, rather than us creating it from whole cloth or paying. There are other jurisdictions that pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to provide similar resources. And I'm not even sure if they're on par with what Ceres is offering. It could be just apples and oranges. Yeah.
Very cool.
Good questions. Susan, is there any?
I have a question somewhat unrelated.
Okay.
Wait till after, but I was wondering, a couple of meetings ago, you're talking about, and forgive me, I forgot the name of it, but there was an app that you guys launched.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's great. Do you have like a status update on that? I'm curious on like where it's gone. So.
Yeah, so we have about 800 downloads. So I'm tough, period. And so we had set up, we had wanted to have about 1,000 downloads, fair amount of activity. We've, in the amount of engagement, we've had about 50,000 pounds of carbon dioxide avoided as part of the actions that people take. It's like you do something, you get a leaf. One leaf is 10 pounds of carbon dioxide avoided, yada, yada. And so it's done well, but not as well as I would have liked. So we talked to our partners, Eco Action Arlington. They agreed. We talked to the vendor. We said we'd like to pull out our funding. You know what the vendor said? You're a really valuable organization to work with. We are going to fundraise and bring the money in to enable us to continue the app.
Wow.
Wow.
Nice negotiating skills.
And so, I mean, it's still, who knows if it's all going to pan out, but at least, so our job, we have many climate policy office, county staff, we have many jobs. One of them that we're focusing on is how do we do more with less county investment? It's not always going to be the case, right? We're certainly going to have to invest, but to the extent that we can partner with like-minded, mission-aligned organizations, like Get Green, because their name is also Get Green incidentally. And advance our sort of shared priorities, why not? So
Yeah, it's a great outcome.
Susan, is there anything that you would like to say on an update from an updates perspective or to any last comments? And we
No,
are-
you have 1 minute left and I will not put you behind, but just you all are doing great and Jennifer's doing great and I'm just honored to be with you.
We are so grateful to have you as our liaison to the county board and really appreciate your active support and engagement on a lot of issues. Well, with that, I think I'm going to forget about, is there anything pressing we should say about the energy committee?
I just did want to let folks know that Arl now picked up,
Right, I had that
participated in our last energy committee meeting and did a short little blurb on a request that we had made for staff to help us understand what Air Team and CPO folks are working on so that we can benchmark that to other jurisdictions and see where our efforts and funding are going compared to other jurisdictions. So stay tuned for more on that effort, but just wanted folks to know.
Right, so I had this note too. I mean, these are open public meetings and what we say can be in the press and can be elsewhere. And I want us to have frank and open conversations, but it does make you do a double take where suddenly you're reading about it in the paper, so.
Well, this is raising the bar, so we're gonna have to get media at C2E2.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know we
Part of my goal to become an energy influencer.
Other stuff, I think, so one question that has been raised again and has come up before is that we never get enough done in these 2-hour meetings and we don't get to talk about the big picture and what are we really trying to do and where can we be most effective? Or should we have a retreat? And I think that rather than discussing this here at the end of the hour, I think the thing to do is for us to come forward with some kind of idea of what a half-day agenda would look like and see if that is something that people would be able to do.
I have to check on that with the commission to see, because it would be more than 2 people meeting, which would be necessary.
Be an open public meeting. Yeah, it definitely would be. At least it better be. I'm
But
not
it would
doing
be
it
around
until
the
they do
campfire,
it.
so.
Would there be an issue, like, let's say we wanted to do this calendar year, since we've already booked out the meeting schedule for the calendar year, would that present an issue with, like, sort of adding an ad hoc additional meeting to a schedule that's been finalized already? Or is it something that we can do and it's just we got to jump through some hoops, or is it something that needs to wait until the new year's schedule?
Depending what you land on, I can just run it by.
Yes, I think if we give notice.
I'll just say the Women's Commission, they, in lieu of a meeting in January, they have a retreat and it's about 4 hours and they just rent a room in Arlington Mills Center. And yeah, they go over like the meetings for the year and like the big rocks and overall goals, things like that. And so yeah, that commission does it. They do have it like listed on the website as like an open meeting and you can like call in, I think, but yeah.
I think given how busy everybody is and the amount of, sorry, I'm the one who sort of, switched to Cindy about this most recently.
It has come up before.
But I'm glad then, because I was gonna see if there was any appetite for this, because we already dedicate so much of our time to these conversations. And every time we're done, I'm like, I wish that we could have had another bit of time, even just to talk interpersonally and team build a little bit to better understand each other and where we come from, because we all bring such different expertise and long-term vision, I guess you could even say. So we could talk more about this at some other time. I also actually won't be at the next meeting. So this is a conversation that we can start at some point and then finalize in the future at some point. It doesn't have to be now, but
I think it's a great idea.
I like it.
Yeah, I'd love to do it.
Kevin?
well, Doug, you'll be at every one then, every retreat.
I need to raise a couple things. I have the SBRC, the Air Force Association. The next meeting was supposed to be in April. They postponed it to May to when I have vacation plan. I was going to ask for somebody to fill in for that on May 11th.
It's probably David.
I actually probably need to cancel my vacation because my mother-in-law's having surgery. So I'm probably going to need to do it, but everything's in flux right now. If anybody's interested, if I need someone to fill on May 11th, let me know. You're probably not going to need to do it, but if we can salvage our vacation, I'm going to try to be out of town May 11th. So just let me know afterwards. Like I said, probably I'll be able to cover it. The other thing I want to bring up is related to our first public speaker on the site on College Spring Term. I'm very, very familiar with that site. I lead a walk every year and lead a walk on May 16th of this year that includes that particular site with the spring that's located there because it's associated with George Washington. If anybody's interested in that SPRC and that site, I'm actually going to be touring that site as part of my annual walk on May 16th. And particularly if you're interested in history and George Washington's connection with Arlington County, that's what the walk's about. I lead that every year. But it just so happens that Moses Ball Spring, which is mentioned on this, and we walk through the parking lot here. So it's part of the whole tour that I do every year. It talks about the archaeology and the RPA that's on the site there.
What time does it start?
1:30, I think.
30.
It's sorry, what day was that again? I
May
I think I'm assigned to that SPRC, so I think.
Yeah, I was really for your benefit as much as anybody, but everybody.
What time is
I
it
think
then?
it's 1:30. Let me double check.
Okay,
And
that might be a little tight for me because I'm supposed to get on later that day. But
going back to what you said about, you might
Is there a
suddenly be unavailable. You know, we have 12 active SPRCs right now. We used to assign 2 to everybody, a primary and alternate, which is, you know, what the county would like and does really help. But, you know, there's 13 of us and, you know, that's 24 assignments. So we haven't necessarily been doing that, but we probably should and probably should. So just saying, there are some more SPRCs coming up. I will send out a note. But with that, I think, thank you. This was a lot of good discussion, a lot of things that are moving forward. And again, I just want to make the point that I think that the work that we're doing is being, I really appreciate the work and I really appreciate that staff and support are responding. So thank you all.
Thanks, Kevin,